Welcome to another episode of an intimate conversation with women of color. I am your host, Deneen L. Garrett. Today's guest is Dr. Melissa Salinas. Dr. Melissa is a Latina clinical psychologist who specializes in trauma and a 200-hour certified yoga teacher who is also certified in trauma recovery yoga. So we're definitely going to have to, find out what that's about. She owns a clinical psychology private practice, AMS Wellness, as well as a company, Authentic Revival Movement, which specializes in retraining the body's stress response and highlights the importance of self-care over the pull yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going mentality like that. Dr. Melissa, welcome and tell us more about you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me today. So that's like a lot of professional jargon, right? So I'm going to throw all of that out because, to be honest, I'm not that person. As I write bios, I'm like, ooh, this is a lot of professional jargon. So let me tell you who I am. I'm an ever-evolving Latina woman. That to me encompasses everything, right? If you would have asked my third grade self, I was like, I'm going to be a psychologist. This is what I'm going to be. And I'm going to have a private practice. And I wanted white picket fence, 9 to 5 private practice. That was it. I was in third grade. And everybody I've ever told that story laughed because here I was at 27 years old, opened the private practice right out of my doctorate. I did everything that I was supposed to do. But God had different plans. And I just had to evolve with them. It was either fight God or go with him.
Right.
And nobody fights the big guy. At least I'm not fighting that big guy. So I've just come to realize that I'm just an ever-evolving human.
I like that. Absolutely. And you know what we are. And I look at my life as a journey. And that journey, today you're here. Yesterday you were somewhere else. And tomorrow you're going to be somewhere different. Right. And it's a journey, and to accept it and pretty much roll with it. Right. I know that you mentioned some, as you kind of touched on, but you mentioned about having plans and then kind of just falling back and leaning into God's plans for you. Right. And sometimes they're in alignment. Right. So yours were third grade. You said you wanted to do something and you actually did it, but God has expanded that for you. And we're definitely going to touch that. So I do want to mention, so the Intimate Conversation is available in your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. So feel free to watch us. And we're having a little bit of a fun today on this Friday with my virtual background. Dr. Mel and I were just talking about it, right? Because I was explaining to her how, and you'll notice that there's cats as part of my background. And a year ago, I didn't like cats. And now I find myself with a cat and 2 of her kittens. So I'm embracing it. But Dr. Mel, so you shared how episodes such as liberation is a personal responsibility and in their strength resonated with you. Share in what ways both women shared impacted you. So their stories, how it impacted you, and why it's important for Latinas to have a platform to use their voices.
Absolutely. So let me just tell you that these just were so powerful, right? So let me start with Christine Carino and her liberation, right? And so the first thing that hit me was kind of this idea of this model minority and how it actually, there comes benefits for sure, but then there's this other piece to it of we got to liberate ourselves from that. We got to use our voice. And it's really funny because in the Latino community, mental health, first off, is not something we want to talk about. That's kept at home, right? And a lot of my mission has been, no, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this, right? It's time for us to liberate ourselves, and how much more of a powerful responsibility that your liberation is yours to do. We can't put it on somebody else. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing to take on that responsibility. But then there was something she said, there was a wording she used, life brand. What a huge term, right? I was like, I stood there, I will never forget. I was looking through my closet while I'm listening to this, and I stopped in my tracks and I was like, life brand, because we are our own brand,
Yes, we are.
right?
Hmm.
And for years, I mean, I hid because, so we can get into this or not, but I was bullied severely.
Oh,
Yeah, severely bullied as a kid. And what happened was my parents, wanting to liberate themselves, brought us out to the suburbs. But they didn't have the abilities to have us babysat here in the suburbs. So we would go back to my old neighborhood where my grandma could walk me to school, and then they could pick us up and we'd do the caravan back to the suburbs. Well, this left a lot of envy, right? Like,
mm,
not rightfully so, but I can understand it now as an adult,
yeah,
right? So towards my middle school years, I was the rich white girl. And I wasn't rich. My dad was waking up at 4 a.m. They were both, lower middle class to middle class towards the end, but they were just working really hard to get us out of an environment that they didn't want.
right.
And so I actually hid who I was for a while. Then I go to an all white high school, very upper middle class, and then I was the poor Mexican. So I was like, I don't know what to be. So I would say for the
Yeah,
first 18 years of my life, or at least, a good portion of those 10 to 8 years of that period, I hid and didn't see myself as a life brand until all of a sudden I realized, like, I am who I am and I got to accept myself.
yes,
And so the way Miss Carino really highlighted that importance of being your own life brand. Who do you want to show to the world? What do you want them to know? That has been everything I've worked on in my adult years, is learning, like, here I am. This is me. Love me, hate me. I'm okay because I know who I am.
right.
And so that was just such a powerful term.
No, absolutely. Because you know what? Nowadays, people are more focused on a brand, right? On that
Mhm.
individual and showing up as who you are. And it is very powerful to liberate ourselves from whoever we may have been before or thought we
Mhm.
were or allowed the world to tell us who we were. And so it is, and Diamond, also in her strength, because as you were talking about Christine, I was also thinking about, Diamond in the similarities and how Diamond, she owned herself and she is who she is,
Mhm.
unapologetic about it.
I love it. Yes.
Right, and just shows up as she is and gives, they both give other people, um I would say it's okay, right? They're living their lives authentically and they're showing
Mhm.
us that it's okay to do the same, right? It's kind of like
Absolutely.
here's the approval, if you will, to go ahead and live your life, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
living mine, so you live yours
Mhm.
as well. So absolutely, and I'm very glad that you found your voice, that you tapped into who
Absolutely.
you are, right? And it served its purpose, right? So when you were hiding, it served the purpose that you needed it to at that time,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And then you no longer needed that. And so you shed that and move on. So awesome, awesome.
Absolutely.
So you've had to create your own tables in the spaces you occupy. You
Mhm.
realize God's plans for your life, as we talked about. Other than
Mhm.
your faith, what strength or strengths did you draw upon? And how are you using your voice for other Latinas?
Ooh, so this is a hard one, right? Because you think and you're like, well, God is all we need, but it's God provides so much, right?
Right. We have to work.
Um,
Faith without work
right.
is
We gotta
dead,
do
right?
stuff.
You got to
I
move.
know. He doesn't do it easy, right? Like he makes us work for it, which is great because it's where we learn and where we grow. One of my biggest strengths, I think, was leaning back on my community. So growing up, my dad would say, um, it's God, family, and country, right? And so what I took country as was values, the values that he raised us in this country. But community and family, he used to say a lot, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
And when I grew, I really relied on different people, right? I relied on my mom,
Hmm.
who's the most giving human being in this world, right? But she may be the only person I allowed myself to cry around and be like, I don't know if I'm going to get through this time and time again. I relied on my dad's, I once dated a guy, he said, "You're cocky." And I was
Mhm.
like, ooh. But then he goes, no, 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 hear me out. He goes, "You're cocky in the sense that your head's always up. You're never going to put your head down." So I'm going to use this same word for my dad. He's cocky. It doesn't matter where he is. He's never going to put his head down. He's going to stand up and own wherever he's at. And so I relied on my community to show me the way, relied on different people to show me what I needed to create these tables, right? Because if I come into a space and my head's down and my shoulders are down, nobody's going to let me come in there. They're going
Right.
to be like, why? Watching my dad be like, I don't care who or what we are. I'm walking in because I'm allowed in this place. I have a place here. I carried that with me. Or my mom's nurturance and love and unconditional positive regard. My God, you meet this woman and you just want to hug her, right? And I'm like, that's what I want people to get from me. I want people to get that unconditional positive regard. So I relied on my community. That's one of the biggest strengths for me, because when you rely on others, you're stronger. You can't do it by yourself. I relied on elders and their stories. My grandma came to this community, my mom's mom specifically. She passed away about 11 years ago. She came to this community. She rocked the community. I mean, they were gangbangers who like, oh, she's here. We're not going to mess with her. And she was just strong. And so looking back to those life lessons within my community, I think really allows me to continue to make tables, because we're changing things here, or at least I'm trying. And so that's been my biggest strength.
That's awesome. Community, people, others. We cannot do it alone, right? And there's not anyone who would say that they have. A lot you're probably solo sometimes, right? But you're
Mhm.
definitely not alone, because you're standing on your elders, you're standing on your ancestors. Someone else has opened the door for you and whatnot. And you may be somewhat the first of doing things, but we're not doing it in a bubble. Some kind of way
We're
there is
not.
somebody behind us, beside us, or even in front of us that we're trying to get to. So yeah, like you said earlier, evolving, ever evolving.
Always.
Yeah, yeah. So some women do not recognize the power of their voices. And here I want to kind of get into the trauma. So the work that you're doing around trauma. But using your voice could be
Hmm.
speaking, writing, acting, however you want to express yourself is how I define using your voice. So,
Hmm.
you're a mental health professional, you're a business owner, you're a
Hmm.
yogi. What are you
Hmm.
telling the women to encourage them to help them to recognize the power of their voices?
Yeah. So this is going to be a huge one for me, because this is my entire journey is about this, right? My entire path right now is helping people live authentically, right? That's so important.
Yes.
So how do you, my new company is literally called Authentic Revival Movement, the revival of being authentic, right? Because in society, we've hid behind the filters, we've hid behind all this thing, right? And I think women more than anything, we've been told we're not good enough. And all these filters come out, we got to put them on because we got to make our face better. Like there's all these things that we're always told. And and then we're told a different message. We're told be self-sacrificing at all times. No matter what you do as a female, you should self-sacrifice, right? If we have kids, we're told you got to self-sacrifice. There's always all kinds of judgments. So the biggest thing that I'm trying to draw is one, women taking care of themselves in a
Yes.
very specific way, right? And then two, as you take care of yourself, you begin to own who you are, all parts to you. And I do this in a couple ways, right? Like I supervise, and especially for my females, I really want to empower them to use their voice to connect with their professional self that they want to create, which links to their authentic who they are as a person, right? Because you bring that to the table.
Right.
Anybody who tells you a psychologist isn't present in the room because they're a blank slate is a lie. I tell people this all the time. Like we're still present, we're still ourselves. And so a lot of times what I'm trying to do is use my own voice as leverage to leverage other women up, right? That glass ceiling effect. That if I've made it here, I want the next generation to just explode.
Right.
Um, and so part of doing that is me talking a lot about self-care. And it's not just like the spa, right? Because we like to
Mhm.
talk about it like that, like, oh, go to the spa, hang out with friends for sure. But there are like 7 different domains in the science world that I'm trying to pull and bring here, right? And that's what Authentic Revival Movement talks about. It teaches you how to connect to these 7 different things. And some of them are simple, right? They're like exercise, eat well, the things that we kind of know. But then some of them are like quiet time, downtime, meditation. Meditation is one of the hardest things in the world. If you would have asked me years ago, I would have laughed at you and been like, ha, now I'm good.
Right.
Right? Because it's hard. But meditation is one of the things that allows you to connect back to your inner soul. Call it God, call it universe, call it spirit, call it whatever you want. But at the end of the day, if you're not connecting back with your inner sense of being, that's, you can't carry yourself through the world. And so a lot of my company is focused there.
Yeah, and you know what? So you're absolutely right. The meditation is very hard. So I shared that I'm reading this book in the Power of Art or something, and I forget the name of it, but it's written by a
Mhm,
Buddhist, and it's about being mindful. It's about,
mhm,
focusing on like one thing at that time, even something as simple
mhm,
as making coffee is the example. I think they may use coffee or they may use tea, but basically when
mhm,
you're doing that, to put all your attention on that thing when you're doing it. And also breathing, right? So focusing on the in, the out, and just really taking the time to just be present. And it is
mhm,
absolutely hard because our mind, like, life has conditioned us to just wander and think like, oh my God, okay, what tasks do I need to take care of? What's going on in the workplace? What's going on here and there? And those are
mhm,
all, the competing thoughts that you have when you're trying to be mindful, when you're trying to meditate. So I so appreciate that you're dedicating, space for that to help us to bring us
mhm.
back to ourselves, to center ourselves because it is so important. And I definitely, I reject that self-sacrifice or that sacrifice. I reject that. You
Mhm.
have to take care of
Good.
yourself first. I definitely reject that. Now, 100%, do I put it in practice? Not necessarily, right? It's because we haven't been used to. So we're having to unlearn, we're having to pivot, we're having to do things differently. And that's why you're in the
Mhm.
business that you're in. That's why you're doing what you're doing, because it's no longer natural for us to take that time and to focus on
Absolutely.
ourselves first. So that, because the thing about it is, and when I hear people talk, when I heard you, what I was hearing while you were talking, is
Yeah.
the flight attendant saying, put your mask on first. If you're
Right.
traveling with someone, your child, put yours on first, then put it on theirs. Because if you don't, you could fall out before you can even get to that next person. So now both of
Mhm.
you,
Are gone.
are gone, right?
Right.
So that's what I always hear and focus on. And I also want to shout out somebody. So we have a mutual friend, Griselda, who connected
Uh-huh.
us. So shout out to her. So many of my
Yes.
guests have been through connections through Griselda. But also why I wanted to shout her out is because in our Facebook group on Sundays, she is like in charge of our self-care. Right? She is
Uh-huh.
reminding us to pause. She's reminding us to breathe. She's reminding us to take a
Mhm.
bath, to do those different things, the things that people say, like you said, the massages and all of that. Okay, that as well, but there's more to it.
Mhm.
So she's reminding us to do all of those things to take care of ourselves first. So I wanted to pause and to mention that.
Absolutely. And to thank her, right? Because this
Yes,
would have never happened without her for sure. It's
right,
funny because we have all these like fancy technologies, right? Like this thing will send like, hey, go ahead and breathe.
right,
And it's
right.
always in the most inopportune times where I'm like, no, like I don't have time for that. But it's so funny. I once heard a podcast and he's like, when you get in an Uber, what else are you doing?
Hmm.
Like, why can't you just take that moment? And we forget that, right? Like there are small moments. I tell parents all the time in practice, I'm like, when you go to the bathroom to pee, inhale and
Right?
make sure that tummy is coming out, and then exhale and make sure that tummy's coming in. And guess what? If you spent that one moment just focused on that and peeing, we're a step ahead today, right? Because it's so hard. We forget throughout, like you said. Or the other big thing, and I'm gonna have to say this because it's a super pet peeve of mine, because I want to make sure everybody's breathing right. So I'm gonna just give this right now. All right. When we inhale, inhale through the nose when you're pretty, what's the way I want to say it? When you're frustrated or things like that, when you want to start to inhale and exhale through the nose. Because what that's doing is it's sending messages to your heart that you're okay. The
Okay.
minute we start exhaling like that, it sends messages, hey, I'm not all right. And so we do this a ton and we hear it all the time. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, which is great. There's a time and a place to practice that. But to calm down, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose is going to slow the heart rate down tremendously, especially if you can exhale for longer.
Okay.
So tummy out when you inhale like a big balloon, tummy in when you exhale, because that's the other thing that a lot of us do. We do it the opposite.
No, thank you for that. And so I was actually practicing the breathing right before I took that, that opportunity to go ahead. I'm like, you know what? Hey, why not? Like, stop and breathe in and out. But I didn't know
Crazy.
about I always exhale through the mouth. It's just something that
Mm.
I've done. So thank you for
Hmm.
sharing the difference and when to do one versus the other.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
in memory of my sister's author and poet Soul True, who had her
Hmm.
own struggles, I want to encourage women of color to think about any of their deferred dreams. So, any dream that they've had that they've delayed, and to act, to do something about it. So, please share if you've ever had a dream deferred and what you've done about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me thank you, because what a beautiful way of honoring her journey and to continue her journey, right? When we talk about using others to continue, that's such a beautiful way to honor her on a daily basis. So every time I hear your podcast, it brings me to tears because I'm like, how
Oh,
beautiful is that? That it just continues to honor her. So let me thank you for that. But I've been thinking about this, right? Because I got two. I got two different ones for you. So one is fashion, right? I've deferred fashion a ton. So I am a huge player of fashion. Like when I go into my closet in the morning, I'm like, what am I feeling? Like
yeah.
today I have my girls can do anything shirt because I'm like, that's what I'm feeling today. But different days bring different things. And I would somehow love to incorporate fashion into my world, into what I do for a living. I don't know how yet. I mean, I had some like weird ideas of like, what if as a psychologist, I go to the stores with people who are anxious to shop, because a lot of
Hmm.
women get super anxious, and I work them through that anxiety and again, release that authenticity of like, hey girl, you don't have to. And I'm gonna bring it back to Diamond, right? Where she talked about like hiding herself
Yeah.
in the professional world. And it's like, no, like Diamond, we need to just be us no matter what world. We could tame it down a little bit if we feel like we have to, but like be you. And so that's one that I'm trying to work through. Because I've put it away. I've been like, no, it doesn't matter. But no, it really does matter because it's important to me. So that's one I definitely want to work on. And another one is getting back into piano. I
Yeah.
quit it, right? Girl, I threw that away. I was like, I got no time for that.
Right.
But I want to get back into it. There's something very peaceful and soothing about piano.
Yeah. No, I like that. I actually took piano lessons. I had a piano when I was younger, and I thought about this recently. Had the piano, and when we moved it into my aunt's house, and it was there
Mm,
forever, right? It was just a piece of furniture, and then it moved to the garage, and I didn't care about it. I wasn't even using it any longer, and so my mom was like, "Hey, look, I want to give the piano away to the pastor across the street, donate it to
mm,
their church." And I'm like, okay. But to this day, I regret giving it away. I should have kept it. It was,
Mm-hmm.
my parents bought that for me. My dad is deceased as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so I, have recently reflected on that's a regret of mine, giving it away, because I should have kept it, right? I could have
Mm-hmm.
even had it refurbished or whatever, and kept it in the home. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I hear
I
you
feel
about the
you.
piano. I used to play as well, and I have a
Yeah.
regret about no longer having my piano, but that's kind of going off track.
Well, can I give you this funny story? I'm right there with you. This is how stubborn I am. I was in 5th grade when I was just had too much going on. And my mom's like, "Oh, okay. So you don't want to do it anymore. You call the teacher."
Ah,
And she thought that was going to get me to continue. Now she forgot how stubborn her daughter was. So I'm like, okay. So I called him and I'm like, "Mr. Guido, I just want to let you know that at this time my priorities aren't aligned with piano anymore.
okay.
But when I get back to it, I will." And she was like, "I should have known better out of you that you would pull something like that." But
Right.
you know what? That's one of my biggest regrets now. I look back to it and I'm like, you should have continued the piano, girl.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. So I'm with you on that particular one. But guess what? There's always tomorrow, right? So
That's it.
you still have an
For sure.
opportunity to do both. I think it goes back to what you said as far as, God's plans, right? So if he put it in you and it is something that, it's in alignment, with the
Mhm,
clothing and the shopping, definitely in alignment with what you're already doing, and
mhm,
pouring into others, investing in others, and then music as well. That's a way to soothe people,
mhm.
to self-care, right? To slow down and
That's it.
pause, and to be creative, right? Because it opens up a different side in your brain, and all of that. So when it's
Mhm.
your time, you'll get back to those things, right? Because you're
For
still talking about
sure.
it.
For sure. Right. If I'm still talking about it, girl, I better get back into
Right,
it.
exactly, right, right. So July is, the focus for July is wealth. How do you define wealth, and what is the relevance of wealth building?
Yeah. So, oof. Well, I'm going to give you kind of a weird answer, but health is wealth,
Yeah,
right?
it
Health is
is. It
wealth.
is.
So, I priority of mine is health, right? Because, and again, that takes it back to the self care. If I'm not taking care of myself on a regular, I can't be healthy enough to build the wealth
Right.
that I'm desiring, the financial wealth, right? So, one of the things I do on a daily basis is I wake up in the morning. My phone is never with me at night. All night that I sleep, I do not have my phone in the room. I have it in an office so I can
Way
hear it
away.
go
Good for
way
you.
away. Because if I don't, 2 companies and then supervising, I will get a call at midnight. It's happened. So I'm like, gotta take that away. But anyway, right when I wake up, after I brush my teeth, do all of that, I go straight into meditating.
Oh, no. Uh-huh.
And then straight after that, I go straight into a workout. Because if I'm at my best self, I can then pour into others' cups, right?
Absolutely.
So those are my 2 things that I must do so that I can build onto financial wealth. And it sounds weird, right? Why am I talking about meditating with wealth? But it's not about the money for me. It's about making sure that I'm at my best. For sure, I want to pay bills.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, girl, I want a good Chanel. I'm not going to lie, right?
Listen. Yes. Look, I just have to say, I last year, I don't know if you noticed in a group, I was asking folks, oh, if you were given X dollar amount, what would you do with it? Like for yourself. I was really trying to get you all to talk me into purchasing a Chanel. So I
You should
wanted
have
you to
contacted me directly.
listen. I was trying to get you all to talk me into it, and nobody really did. Some people were like, "Oh, I'm gonna pay off bills," or "I'm gonna," and I'm like, "No, that's not what I'm asking you all." So I will share that about a month or so ago, I did purchase my first Chanel. Yes, and I
Yes,
carried her
girl.
twice.
Yes. Right. Because you know what? You just feel a little different when you treat yourself.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely. And it
feel
is what
different.
self-care, right? That is definitely a form of self-care. We have to. Like, why
Uh-huh.
wouldn't you? You work, you do the things, you have the income. I mean, if of course now, if you're saying, oh, let me purchase that instead of paying, my mortgage or something like that, oh, that's a whole, no, we're
Right.
not saying that at all. But if you
Right.
have it, spend it on yourself. Like you have one life. and you have to live it. And we have to do more of that, right? So again, I do appreciate everything you're doing, because you're helping women, you're helping us to understand those things, right? And to get back to that. And it's okay. Like, it's fine. It's
Mhm.
definitely fine. So I know health is wealth for sure.
For sure. But then again, like, yeah, do I invest in things? For sure. I have this rule that I will only put things on credit card that I can pay in cash at the end of the month.
Hmm.
And it's a form of still building my credit, right? Because you got to build the credit. But it's also a form of making sure that I'm making smart financial decisions. Because at the end of the day, I say this a lot. Right now, I don't have kids. So my babies are my nephews and my nieces.
Yeah.
And so I had this really special opportunity one day to allow my two oldest to create their own shoes,
Nice.
right? Yeah, they sat down with a designer and they created their own shoes. So my extras tend to go to either little luxuries like that for myself or for those littles,
Yeah.
because I want them to know that, again, my parents worked so hard. They came from Mexico. Their parents brought them from Mexico. They kick their butt day in and day out to get to here. So my job now is
Hmm.
to get to here,
Yes.
to break through that glass ceiling. And to spoil my parents too as much as I can, because they work so hard.
Yeah.
So for sure, I still do the investments, and I still have a savings account that I make sure continues to build throughout the years. I'll make like small financial goals at the beginning of 2020, or the year, to say I want my savings account to reach this. And I work to try to build that, so
Right.
that, again, there's always a nest. Mom used to say, make sure you have, what does she say? Make sure for a rainy day. You
Yeah.
got something for a rainy day.
Right.
So I'm definitely making sure we got some for a rainy day. I'm definitely making sure for future financial wealth for my kids and my future family,
Yeah.
but then also to splurge a little bit. So that's
Absolutely.
basically what, for me, wealth building means.
No, and all those things, right? All of those are very definite, smart decisions. Again, you're making sure you're taking care of yourself. You're, having a little fun with it. You're looking out for other people, and it's long term, right? It's not that
Mhm.
everything is just for right now. So
Mhm.
all of those are great things, and great things, takeaways for those who are listening and or watching. So I appreciate
Mhm.
everything that you've shared. So before we wrap, before we say
Mhm.
goodbye, what would you like to leave our audience with?
Yeah. So I think the thing I want to leave you guys with is knowing how special and important you are. Like, if somebody hasn't told you today, you are powerful, you are special, you are important, you are. And I hope to God that you take the conversation today. And if there's anything that you take from it, is learning that we are resilient as humans, right? I didn't come from a strong financial background. I got bullied nonstop, but there is an out. So anybody who feels in this moment like they're not living their authentic selves, there is a way.
Thank you so much. So, Melissa Salinas, Dr. Mel,
Yeah.
I so appreciate you for sharing your voice on an intimate conversation with women of color, and enjoy the rest of your day. And for those who are out there watching, listening, again, make sure you continue. We appreciate you coming back. Those who are, loyal and come back, and like Dr. Mel talked about several episodes that resonated with her. I want to hear from you. What resonates with you? What do you enjoy? What are you getting out of this? Go to DaninaO'Gara.com, leave a voice message, leave a review, etc. Definitely want to hear from you. Want to thank you for continuing to either listen, watch, or both. Shout out to my folks who are overseas, because I appreciate you all and I see you. And again, Dr. Mel, thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye, you guys.
Bye, everybody.